أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the soul of Haj Nowruz Ali Mursali, please recite a Fatiha after a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. How good is it to live with Iman, live with Tawheed, and to pass away with Tawheed and monotheism. This is the dream that all of us have, is to live with God, to live with monotheistic belief, and to, at the end, die with monotheism and Tawheed. Because a believer should long for the meeting of God. We know that it is sad for us, those that are here, and the memories that we have. But you have to realize that every believer should have one longing in this world. What should they wish for? What should they want? Liqa'ullah, meeting God. That is the dream that all of us have, and that is what makes us as believers fearless of death. Because for us, it is meeting our Lord. It is for us the removal of the barriers and understanding and being aware of God, how He actually is. So this is not something for us as that person that passes away that you would feel sorry for him in a way, or we feel sorry for ourselves because we miss them. But we know that the barriers are removed and they're meeting God. A person that is a monotheist, a person that has worshipped God, a person that has lived his entire life serving God, this is the time that the believer has his reward. And this is the time that the believer, his test is over. And there's obviously no annihilation. It is just actually real life. This life that we have in this world is not really life. When a child is in the stomach of their mother, usually, even though that they are technically, alive according to Islam, but we say he or she is born after they come to this world. That is life now. They say, how old are you? They count the age when they were born, as if we never even counted that time. Even though there is life, there's a spirit there. But because that type of life is so different than this type of life, usually people don't consider that. And when they say they're born here and then they lived here, they say that is when they came to this world, right? They came out. In the same way, when we go to the next world, it would be as if we would say, oh, that life that I had in the dunya was as if I was in my mother's stomach. It wasn't real life. It was just, I would hear her heart beating, for example. I was, getting nutrition through my mother, for example, through the umbilical cord. But I wouldn't really consider that life. In the same way, when we die, we're actually born. That is true hayat for us. And this is something that as we tell the dear family, we wish them patience, but know that this is their true life. Now they are born. And especially a person that died with Tawheed, that is going to be a beautiful life for them. This will be the start of a beautiful life. Please recite as-salawat. I heard others have passed away, their family members. As-salawat upon all your marhumeen, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad Ali Muhammad wa ajal farajahum. We started a new discussion in talking about the importance of living a monotheistic lifestyle, living a life with God. Because in this day and age, we are suffering from being of the ghafilin, those that have forgotten God. And if you look at the time period of our holy prophet, he lived in the age of ignorance, Jahiliyyah. And now we have a new Jahiliyyah that we're living in. The things that were halal, things that were ma'ruf, things that were good, now are bad or munkar. They despise it. And things that were, as the Prophet warned, that things that before were munkar, were bad, we would say, who would do such an action? Today it's good and ma'ruf. Things have switched. Why? Why has this happened? Because we have left God. Because we have left God. So it's incumbent, especially the youth, on all of us to return back to God. Return back to our fitrah. Return back where we came from. And we said there are many problems that we have. And what are the problems that we have? It is those philosophies that are ingrained in us that are barriers that are holding us down. My dear friends, my dear brothers, sisters, many times you hear questions from the youth. And the question is not because the theological argument is weak, it's because you see that in their minds there has been an influence of different type of philosophies that bring a person to question God. One is, for example, we mentioned last week, humanism. Humanism is ingrained in our culture. If you cannot identify it, you'll struggle with it. Humanism, we define this as that humans are the focal point of our lives now. Humans and human desire. God, therefore, is not the focal point. There was a time period where Muslims, Christians, and Jews, the center of life in a person's lifestyle was God. Now, the center of life is humans. What makes you happy? What are your desires? Even if it's haram, it doesn't matter. What do you want to be? What do you identify as? Even if it doesn't make sense according to biology and science. It is what you like. But traditionally, in the religious eras that humans had, it was always, what does God want? And what God wants is what is good for me, not what my lower desires want. So you see the danger of humanism inside of us. 2, we talked about secularism, that we focus on the material and we leave the spiritual alone. People are confused. If you tell them you have a spirit, your body and spirit, they're confused. Because we have worked so much on the material. Not that I'm saying we have to leave everything alone, that has to go with the material. But our primary focus in life, and if a time ever comes up for me that I have to give up the material for the spiritual, which one would I decide? Is spiritual benefit more important or is material benefit more important? But unfortunately, we don't. This is not our lifestyle. If I tell you right now, tonight, at Masjid Al-Nabi, millionaire, and whoever attends his speeches is going to get $100,000, for example, whoever, everybody would come here. Everybody, you would see, there wouldn't be space. They would fight and maybe beat each other up in the line just to get everyone 100. But if I told you tonight, Sayyid is going to share with you a few verses of Quran. Sayyid is going to share with you a few ahadith. Is anyone fighting each other to learn the hadith and knowledge from Quran? No. They say if a person knew the worth of adhan, who does the adhan, they would fight each other in this world. Let me do the adhan. But nobody wants this fight over the microphone. It's usually me and the reciters that are fighting over the microphone. Who can have more time to speak, who can have more time to recite. But you see, in reality, nobody is fighting over and I ask yourselves tonight, gauge this. Is my effort for dunya really material? Or is when I wake up in the day for knowledge and worship? Which one am I stressed out about? And if one day my spirituality comes low and I make a mistake in my life, if I'm more upset, or when my portfolio drops and there's a stock market crash, which one hurts me more? Or somebody rips me off in a large sum of money. So you see that we are influenced, unfortunately, with the secularism, influenced with humanism. And I mentioned last week, not only Muslims, Christians, priests, and pastors, they complain and they say, we cannot even talk about the fact that man is God's slave, even though in the Old Testament or in the Bible, in Greek, or say, one of the oldest translations is Greek, it says 100 times slave, but they translate it as servant, 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 because a slave is too harsh. Slave doesn't own anything. How am I a slave of God? It doesn't make sense with humanism. Because humans are supposed to be the center. And the pastor would say, how can I tell my congregation that your desires are not the focal point? It should be God's desires. Because everyone is using religion and God for their own desires. It's a good God if He gives you your hawa'ij and makes your du'as happen. He's just supposed to help you out. That's how we view God. Not that I should sacrifice what I want. And in haram, there's a red light that I change my desires to equal what God wants. No. God is just supposed to help me get my hawa'ij, my du'as answered. That's it. He's just supposed to help me in getting more material benefit. God, that's what people that are not very too deeply into religion and ignorant, they'll come to God, and if He doesn't answer their material wishes, what do they do with God? They put Him aside. God, get out of the way. You didn't help me when I wanted this. You didn't help me. I said, I wanted a new house. You didn't help me. I wanted a new car. I wanted shafa, for example, for my family members. You never gave it to me. You're not a good God because you didn't help me in the material. Unfortunately, didn't you see, my dear brother and sister? Yes, we should make dua for the material. But we never want God just because of my own aspirations. No. I'm supposed to conform myself. I'm supposed to submit to the will of God. There's a beautiful hadith that Imam Ali alayhi salam mentions in Khutbah Qasi'ah. That actually there's two attributes that God says, all good goes back to the attributes of God. There are two attributes that are from Himself, and He does not share this, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, with anybody. Who can tell me these two attributes that God has for Himself? He should not share with anybody. One is Al-Aziz, the other one is Al-Kibriya. Al-Aziz, in Farsi we say Aziz here, Aziz al-Diram, that means something else. Aziz means dear in Farsi. But Al-Aziz means mighty, the mightiness of God, His might. And Kibriya is His greatness. And in God says, in Imam Ali says in this khutbah, that if nobody should have these two attributes, greatness and might, because we're all supposed to submit to the will of God. And those that have fought God about these attributes, Imam Ali says God has cursed them. So the entire good attributes that we can have as a monotheist comes back from submission to God. That is how you become a good person. Many times we talked about this in Thursday night, that we're trying to become a good person without God, and it doesn't make sense. You cannot become a good person. They might look a little good. They might be nice. But to attain makaramul akhlaq that the Prophet was sent for, the only way is through God. That is the only way. We'll talk about it inshallah later on. The only way is through Tawheed. Because when you submit to the kibriya, the greatness and the izzah and the al-aziz of God, the might of God, then you follow God, and then the attributes of God will be, inshallah, instilled in you. And if you do not, you fight with God about these things, what will happen? There'll be the curse of God upon us. We talked about liberalism, meaning that mankind, the supremacy of freedom. That freedom is what is supreme in our life. So how can I tell people that you have to do this? God says, do this is haram. Do not eat this. Do not drink this. Do not wear this or wear this. How can I tell people when my culture and my lifestyle is mixed with liberalism? How can I tell the people? How can I tell youth that is ingrained this in his mind that man should be free to do whatever he wants? Shaykh Mutahari gives a very good example. He says, having taqwa or having God consciousness or piety is not going against freedom. He says, actually, these are not going against freedom. Because the same way, if I ask you, is a house, is that restriction for you? If you live in a house, it has walls, right? It is, you're restricted in some form. But does anyone call a house a place of restriction? Would you call it a place of restriction, a house? Or would you call it a refuge? Or would you call it protection? You would call it protection. Shaykh Mutahari says, no. The laws of God are not going against freedom, that man is now limited. It is actually taqwa. It is an enhancement. It is protection. It is a refuge. And when you are protected from from mafsada and corruption, then you could truly live life. That's all the laws of God are, to protect you. Does he gain anything from you when you obey or not obey? No, he does not. It is just he does not want you to corrupt yourself. He loves you so much. He doesn't want you to hurt yourself or harm yourself. And he says, this haram, this harm, self-harm is not allowed. I will not allow it. And I make rulings against it. And if you look at all the instructions of Islam, it's only to protect us. Today, you see, we live in a lifetime that the nafs and desires have been let loose. Ego has been let loose, causing us a disaster. As I said, this age, this time period that we live in, a new jahiliyyah, a new age of ignorance. And the only way we can be saved is by connecting to God and by his commands. Because those commands will protect you from addiction. Those commands will protect your eyes when everyone's eyes are watching everything in this world. Those commands will protect your ears when everyone is listening to whatever they want, even evil things. It will protect your ears. As again, they are protection from you. They will save you from corruption. And again, everything that we view, everything that we do, it goes back to where? The heart. That heart that Allah mentions in the Quran, that when they enter heaven, they enter hell because they had qulub that la yafqahuna biha. Hearts that they cannot understand with it. They had eyes, but wala yubsuruna biha. They didn't see with those eyes. As the narrations from Imam Ali alayhi salam is narrated, and he said, don't look at this world, look through this world. Look through this world. See Tawheed and monotheism through this world. My dear friends, one of the sad things, I was recently had a trip and watching different animals, for example. And they were explaining everything about this animal and the social skills and what it does and its skeleton and how marvelous this animal, and it really is fascinating. But I was listening, it actually made me very upset because I didn't hear one time them mention that God created this animal. I heard everything, and you get used to it. That's the sad thing. You get used to listening of God's creation and praising God's creation without praising the Creator. How wrong is that? Think about it. I want you to break free from humanism, secularism, liberalism, and to think. We know they have the same program in Iran that my kid would watch. It's called Khoda Chi Afaride. It's like a nature show. But the title is about, look at what God has created. That's the title. So when a kid looks and learns about a lion, he knows who created the lion, right? How come when we go and see artwork, so for example, you go to France and you go to the Louvre Museum and you see at the end, you go to Mona Lisa. Now, I don't know if that the actual painting is that. There's some debate. Is that the real painting or not? I don't know. But you see it, everyone say, oh, look at the artist. Wow, look how great he is. How come when it comes to painting, we talk about the painter? But when it comes to creation, we don't talk about the designer. We don't talk about the creator, the sustainer. This is, as I said, a huge fault that we have, that our lifestyle is not Islamic, our lifestyle is not Tawheedi, because we see everything, the signs of God. His signs are في السماوات والأرض. His signs are everywhere. Everywhere you should be seeing God. As I said, Imam Ali mentions, look through the world. All you should be able to see, if you have eyes that can see, an ear that can hear, a heart that can think, all you should be seeing, and I tell myself this, is God. Unless a person should be blind. And what causes a person's vision to be blurry? Sins. The eyes cannot see anymore. The heart cannot see anymore. You know, the heart actually in tradition has, just like ears and eyes, the traditions have hadith, that the heart should be able to see. The mind should be able to think. But we go around our entire day and looking at everything from the sky, from the earth, and we don't think about God for 1 second, unfortunately. And the last we said is relativism, and these are barriers to living a tawheedi, a monotheistic lifestyle. So monotheism and tawheed should be in us in every second that we live. A good Muslim is one that lives with God. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. He is with you. But the problem is, He's there. We're not there. We're not thinking of Him. We don't have that ma'iyyat. I want to give you the story of Prophet Ibrahim, because everyone likes stories. Prophet Ibrahim, as we know, we have how many prophets? 124,000. Yes. Just add 100 and minus 10,000. But yes, 124,000 in hadith. How many Rasul do we have? 300. The child is raising his hand. 313, you said, mashallah. 313 Rasuls. Right? In the prophets of Ulul Azm, Azm is here with Z, not the. Azm means resolution, of resolve. The prophets of resolve, there are 5. The difference with them, according to our scholars, say Al-Nabi is a prophet of God, but has a message for him and to share with everyone. That's the difference between a Nabi and a Rasul. Rasul has a message and he has to go out and share that message. A Nabi can even be at a city and they refer to him. He doesn't have a new message, for example, but he's guiding the people. But Rasulullah, for example, the last of God's messengers, he had a message. He even wrote about 28 letters to different people to make sure that they, different kings, not just people, emperors, kings, to give them information about his new message to the Byzantines, to the Persians. Then we have Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ that was a Rasul and also was one of the Ulul Azm. The Ulul Azm prophets are those that have divine law. They brought law, and Ibrahim ﷺ had law, a specific law for himself. He lived in Babylon, in an area in modern-day Iraq. During the time of Nimrud, a very powerful king in Mesopotamia, and that, we never had a king ever, even though however great they were, the pharaohs and Nimrud, all these people, they never had a king that ruled the entire world. We never even had evil or good. Even Prophet Dawood, Prophet Sulaiman, never ruled the entire world. There'll be one person that will rule the entire world. Who's that? Imam Mahdi Ajallah Ta'ala Faraj. One person will do something that nobody will ever be able to do. Evil or good, nobody had the world in his hands. That'll be Imam Zaman. So Nimrud was powerful and he was worried because a soothsayer or someone that would predict the future, his name was Azar. We say he is the uncle of Prophet Ibrahim. He looked at the constellations, he looked at the stars, and he says, it seems like someone's going to be born and he's going to overthrow you and your religion. And he predicted, just how Musa a.s. and Pharaoh. So what they did is this. They split female and male from each other. Said, a child will be born that will do this. So they split them. So a child cannot be conceived. But so how was Prophet Ibrahim conceived? Because he was the family member of Azar. Azar was his uncle. So his brother, which was family member, and obviously, of this royal family, it was too hard for them, obviously, to separate from their families, from their wives. So that restriction was not for Prophet Ibrahim's father, because Azar was his uncle. So therefore, he was the one that predicted this would happen. So Nimrud thought, okay, it's okay for him, them too. But when Allah wills for a prophet to be born, he had actually from the same advisor's family that warned them, he was actually conceived. And when he was conceived, his mother then was very worried because they would kill the children. So he put him in a cave and just hid him in a cave. Now there's some that say a year and a half he was in a cave. Some even say 13 years he was in a cave. They'd go back and forth and to make sure that he's okay, but it was a miracle that this child, a child, if you just put him here, as parents today, you think that they're not going to make it if their parents aren't there for 5 minutes. But he was in a cave. It was a miracle of God and was protected and saved until a time period came for him to come down. Prophet Ibrahim was not a prophet then. He comes down and he sees, according to this one version, he sees the people worshiping idols. He sees, and shows it goes against our fitrah. Our fitrah and ingrained in us is to worship one God. He comes and sees them worship idols that can't do anything. And immediately he's outspoken. Because Prophet Ibrahim is a good example for us as a person that lived a monotheistic Tawheedi life. He comes and he destroys these idols basically in his mind, in his arguments. And Azar, even though he liked him at that time because he reminded him of his brother and his brother had passed away, they say, he is actually worried about him now. He's actually going against the priests. Then they say, okay, those aren't our real gods. We want to show you our real gods. So then they go and show him one of the stars. Some of the Mufassirin say it was actually a planet. This here, when it means star or kawkab, here is actually Venus. Some say it was Venus, and Allama Tabai actually calculates when this event took place, so when Venus is shown. He actually calculated. So it was actually Venus. And then he looks at it and he says, this is not my God because it's set. My God does not set. Does make sense, even if you believe God's na'udhu physical, but God cannot set. There's no beginning or end to God. So then they say, okay, no, now wait. Then the moon comes. The moon is bright, it's nice. Especially back then, you're imagining maybe possibly 2,000 years before BC. So then they look and they see the moon, and he sees the moon, and then the moon sets. He says, my Lord cannot set. Then the Quran has it, they show him the sun, they show him the sun, how bright the sun is. He says, this, and he questions, obviously some say this is a rhetorical question because prophets do not lie. There's a difference how they resolve, this is my Lord. Hada Rabbi, this is my Lord. So this is a rhetorical question to show them. And then they wait and wait and wait, and the sun says, this is not my Lord. So then they become very furious and upset. This child, possibly the age of 13, is arguing with these old priests, old worshippers of God. And finally, when there is a festival, he is so brave, and it teaches us this lesson, how to be strong in monotheism. He looks for an excuse for them to leave, and he takes, the Quran mentions, the idols and breaks them. Ibrahim, you've heard, the prophet, the idol breaker. He broke the idols. But what did he leave? He left one idol, right? One idol, the biggest. And how Quran mentions that they come and chase him and they say, they come back from the festival, who did this? And actually, in the Quran, it mentions that he was young too as well. It mentions here that قالوا من فعل هذا بآلهتنا إنه لمن الظالمين قالوا سمعنا فتى. It says we heard a youth. Fatan means a youth, a young person. He did this, يَذْكُرُونَ يُقَالَ لَهُ Ibrahim. They call him Ibrahim. He was speaking bad about him. Let's get Ibrahim. Let's get him. Said they get him. And then they mentioned to him, says, قَالُوا أَأَنْتَ فَعَلْتَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا يَا Ibrahim. Did you do this to our lords, to our gods? And then he gives them this clever answer that the Mufassirin, again, they answered this way. It says, قَالَ بَلْ فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرُهُم. Because prophets do not lie. He said this, the largest idol broke all the other idols. I didn't do it. He wanted to show a point. Now, those that understand this correctly can say, هَذَا كَبِيرُهُم هَذَا. This one broke them. فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ إِن كَانُوا يَنْتِقُونَ. Ask them if they could speak. So this they say, ask them if they can speak. إِن كَانُوا يَنْتِقُونَ. Meaning it's not a jumla khabariya. It's not a sentence that is giving you news, because kidh and lying is for jumalat that are khabariya, that are information. Like for example, are you here? Yes, I'm here. You can say I'm lying. But if it's insha'iyah, there's no sidq or kizb in it. This is just a note. So he says, actually he does it. And then they admit, فَرْجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ فَقَالُوا إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ ثُمَّ نُكِسُوا عَلَىٰ رُؤُوسِهِمْ لَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ مَا هَؤُلَاءِ يَنْتِقُونَ. Then they bring their faces down because they knew they could not speak. He gave them a perfect example. Sometimes you tell them something, you show them something. He broke all their idols and and saved the biggest one and said, ask them if they can speak. And if they're their gods, then said, why don't they speak? So they brought their heads down. But they're still furious. They could never answer. This is the issue that we have all the time. When it comes to truth and absolute truth and relativism, that there's no relativism. There is absolute truth. And when it comes to absolute truth, those that are ahlul haq and part of the truth, they're always logical. They always have arguments, if you see from the prophets, of knowledge, of logic, that makes sense, and that they couldn't answer them. And the opposite is always the way of mischief, the way of corruption is always the way of the nafs, the way of the lower nafs, because they wanted to worship them. Then they get upset with Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is Surah Anbiya, you can read it. One page nicely explains the story. There they say, he says, Uffun lakum, he is very brave. Amongst all these people, he's all alone. Imagine this. Yes, Prophet Lut helped him, but here we understand he is all alone. قَالُوا حَرِّقُوهُ وَانْصُرُوهُ آلِهَتَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. It says, burn him. Burn this kid. That's enough. First, he was a child. He criticizes our gods. He gives us logical arguments. Now he says, set him on fire. And everybody know here, they built a catapult for this. It actually took them a while because they're going to build such a large fire that they would have to, because fire, you can't just throw something in a large fire. If it's going to be huge, you're going to need a catapult. And this catapult was more like a fortress. It was a fortress. And they're going to throw him inside the fire. But for Prophet Ibrahim, and this is another more of the story, if you help Allah, Allah will help you. If you help Allah, if you're strong, and we're going to give, I'll give it now, examples. You're at work sometimes, they invite you for company parties, and there's alcohol in it, says, I will not go. I'm going to be firm, right? Like Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. You go to college, you go to university, you graduated, they invite you, your peers, to go out and have, a fun time together. You say, no, it's haram. You're firm. You're firm in monotheism. This is how we learn from Prophet Ibrahim. The prophets were very firm. They didn't say, okay, this time yes, tomorrow no. They draw a line and say, this is not going to satisfy my Lord. That is what we learn from Prophet Ibrahim, my dear brothers. That he was firm. He stood for Allah and Allah saved him. In the tradition, it has before they threw him in the catapult, they gave Prophet Ibrahim clothes, a certain shirt. And this shirt, it is said, that would protect him from the fire. This shirt had in it written Tawheedi lines. In one of them, it also mentioned the name of Prophet Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala God has, I want you to really think what this means. To save Ibrahim, mentioning his own name and mentioning the name of Prophet Muhammad. And that will not allow him to, because we believe when all the prophets were created in Alamul Arwah, the world of spirits, and before we came to this world, that our prophet was the first creation, Prophet Muhammad. And then when the prophets came, our prophet was the teacher of all the other prophets. So this is the name of Prophet Ibrahim's teacher in the other world. And he puts this name, and they throw him in there. And then here, I'm going to give a joke. Those that will get it, because it's from our Sheikh Ahmad al-Mushtaidi. Our teacher would joke a lot. And I'll just say it here, what he said. He says that then Allah says something to the fire that if they were to tell us, we would become cold as well. So Allah tells the fire, Ya naru kuni bardan wa salama ala Ibrahim. Inshallah, you got the joke. I'll tell you later on if you want. So it tells the fire, be, cold, and salam, be cool and peaceful for Ibrahim, and the fire did not burn Prophet Ibrahim. Let's recite Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the lesson of this story is examples of a monotheistic lifestyle. Is the story of Prophet Ibrahim that became a prophet at the age of around 13. And he sacrificed whatever he had. He was courageous to establish the truth. In the same way, we have to ask ourselves, how firm are we when it comes to monotheism? How firm are we when it comes to God's laws? Is it sometimes it's okay for me, for example, something that is haram, sometimes it comes to a wedding. Say it's only one night, yek shabe, just one, it's okay. We have some haram actions at the wedding. But no, a person that is a follower of Prophet Ibrahim, he is a muwahhid his entire life. His entire life is he's remembering God. And actually the narrations say this. When you want to engage yourself, do you remember God? It's not only about saying La ilaha illallah or saying Subhanallah, for example. This is part of it. It's actually a La ilaha illallah that's done with ikhlas. What is La ilaha illallah that's done with ikhlas and sincerity? It's that saying there's no God but Allah, that is done with sincerity, that causes you to stay away from haram. That is true remembrance of God. When haram comes to you, and that La ilaha illallah that you said with sincerity, that causes you, no, I'm not going to do that. That is called dhikra amali. Not only lafzi or qalbi, not only remembering God with the tongue or with the heart, that's remembering God with my actions. That God, I want you. I know it's a temptation for me. I know it's hard, just like in marvelous stories of all these prophets. They struggled. But at the end, they performed these actions because that was a remembrance of God. God, dear brother and sister, has created life and death to test which one of us has the best action. And some, like Prophet Ibrahim, will fight against an entire town, an entire, kingdom, and will be successful because of his tawheed. We have our own challenges and tests in our own lives. At work, we will be tested every day. Is this haram or not? In business, we'll be tested every day. At school, we'll be tested every day. With family, we are tested every day. But the true monotheist is the one that has dhikra amali, that his actions reflect his belief and sincerity of God, that nothing will shake them. And yes, sometimes the trials of God are very difficult, but that same God that saved Ibrahim from the fire will save you when you follow him and submit to him, and you will have a better life, inshallah. As long as we take haram from ourselves, take ghaflat and forgetfulness of Allah, and make our lifestyle a true tawheedi and monotheistic lifestyle, inshallah. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على